everybody, and welcome to Speaking of Sustainability, the show where we introduce you to the leaders and change agents making a difference in the sustainability space. I'm your host, Colleen Falicki. After starting my composting business in 2017, I quickly realized that our communities are looking for more ways to be sustainable in their daily lives and to support eco-friendly businesses. I'm so excited to introduce you to some sustainable superheroes as we all look to make our planet a better place for years to come. And welcome to Speaking of Sustainability. I'm super excited to be here today and to introduce you to our two guests, not one, but two. And before we do that, I just wanted to tell you, or I know if folks that have been listening and watching, at the beginning of each episode, we share a sustainability fact. So I'd like to share that with you today. And I think this is really pertinent to the guests that we have on today. But when used for gardening or farming, compost reduces the need for fertilizers and pesticides in soils and helps improve soil health and thereby increasing agricultural yields. I hope our guests can attest to that today. But welcome to our two guests today. I'd like you to meet Chris Mattingly and Mike Bennett. They are the co-owners of Backyard Eats. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Colleen.
Hi, thank you, Colleen.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for being on today. I'm super excited to talk with you about backyard gardening, and I hope our guests can learn from you today. That's my goal. All right, let's dig in. So I'm going to start with Chris. Tell us how you got started helping folks garden in your community.
Sure. Well, it started with a career that I left in environmental consulting. So oddly enough, I was designing landfills as well as site remediations for Superfund or contaminated sites. So when I left consulting, I had a chance to sort of figure things out and figure out what to do next. I had always known that I wanted to apply skills that I learned in civil engineering, environmental engineering, to a small business, to a service business. I just knew that's where I belonged. And I love building things and helping people and serving people in their homes is especially rewarding. So I was actually thinking about doing a composting business. I'm sure I told you this.
Oh,
We met a long time ago, right? Feels like
yes.
Forever in our businesses, and right around the beginning of both of our businesses, 6-7 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually was thinking about that. I just thought, I think I was in my front yard garden in Chestnut Hill and picking from the blueberry bush, which was one of the first things I put in when we moved. So it was actually producing some blueberries, and if you've tried it, blueberries, off the bush, if you've gone to an orchard or had it in the home garden, they're a totally different experience, from store-bought berries. So you have this amazing experience of like the different, like slightly different hues or sizes and levels of ripeness, and you sort of have this smorgasbord of like flavors. You've got sugary ones and you've got more tart sour ones, and everyone has their own taste. So I have my two boys out there, and one's like because they haven't learned not to eat the ones yet.
Yep.
So I just remember having this experience, and I think at the time I was just big on Instagram and sort of sharing everything I was doing with triathlon and marathon and gardening, and I just thought, well, I've really got to share this. I have to share this. And so that was really the intuition that led to, what if I made an offering around home gardening? And I just set to work learning gardening.
Did you start in your yard? Is that where you were in your yard first, and would neighbors come up or friends ask you about what you were doing?
Yeah, you're right. I was definitely getting right to work in our yard when we bought our house in Chestnut Hill, and just sort of colonizing every square foot of available space. So we had a front garden, a side front garden, a side back garden, and probably three
Impressive.
compost piles. As I would go out to my neighbors and grab all those bags, right? All the bags of
The leaf
leaves,
bags. Yeah.
hoard them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Important for your carbon for your pile, for sure.
So we think we built our backyard raised beds, which are like the typical backyard eat style custom
Hmm.
built raised bed that's say 18, 24 inches high with a nice ledge on it so you can sit down, rest and drink. We did one of those in our back patio, and this is a tiny house. I mean, a tiny postage stamp
Hmm.
of a place, but just every square foot was used for gardening or some sort of productive use, and it was gorgeous.
I
Um,
bet.
that's that's how we do. So I forget the question. I just started talking about my garden.
Well, it sounds, I mean, I asked you how you got started. And so in your home garden is kind of where it all began. It sounds like, and
Yeah.
kind of grew from there.
I did it I think it's a cool story because I really didn't take much money to start, or expertise. I started with Philly Master Gardeners. So I did that
Hmm.
program, and that was helpful for a really rounded like base of gardening knowledge. Then I went out to my neighbors and friends to do their gardens in a sort of official way, but charge them nothing, and which was good because I destroy their gardens, or a groundhog did, or the lack of water did, and it was just like constant problem solving,
Sure.
all day, every day.
Gaining
And
experience.
what's up?
Gaining experience.
Getting experience, yeah, and just putting together the playbook on how do we replicate success in the garden.
Hmm.
And so I'm an engineer and a visionary, and together with Mike, we put together this really cool thing that continues to evolve.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to see you evolve every day, month. Talk to some of your customers as well. Speaking of Mike, Mike is the co-owner of Backyard Eats. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, what would you say the biggest obstacle is for folks? What would you say people aren't aware of when it comes to sustainability, for a backyard garden and growing food in your yard?
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about a concept recently, like food miles. You've ever heard that? Which
I
is like,
have.
yeah, how far food has to travel, to get to your plate, pretty much. Yeah, as growers, I think we think a lot about when we talk about sustainable agriculture. We think about what's happening, on site growing, using organic pest deterrents and disease deterrents and organic methods like infrastructure and kind of sustainable infrastructure, sustainable maintenance. Which from a grower's perspective is the day to day, pretty much, and how they can become sustainable. But as a culture, I think food miles is a really interesting concept because food miles of growing in the backyard. You go out, you pick lettuce, you put it in a salad, you've traveled 20 steps maybe. if,
Mm-hmm.
if you go to the farmer's market, a local farmer grew something and then they put it in a car that used, gas, their time, their energy, brought it to the farmer's market. You use your gas, your time, your energy, resource to get there and grab it. Still a pretty close, relatively, still a pretty close system. But as you expand out and talk about internationally traveling food to supermarkets, things like that, we're really talking about like what's the impact there of strawberries in the grocery store, like in the middle of winter. Strawberries here in PA don't grow through winter, at least, don't plant survives, but the fruit isn't there. But you can go get strawberries in the grocery store in most places, even organically grown strawberries that could have been grown, with attention and organic practices, but they might have traveled from I don't know if I'm not a strawberry expert, Florida, California, Mexico. And the impact there is, resource, somebody's time, energy, your money, whatever, to get the strawberries there. And I think that is a concept that I think people are starting to understand, but don't quite understand like the gravity or the consequence, I guess, of like what actually happens to those strawberries. They get harvested, they get packaged, they get transported, in terms of sustainability. And then, for me, on like a more personal anecdote is like, I think there's a lot to be learned about the sustainability of like personal health as it relates to the seasons. Like what can grow here at the certain time of year and what our bodies need at that time of year. And, not that strawberries aren't healthy in the middle of winter, but there could be a reason they grow here in spring. So
that makes sense.
It's something I think about a lot too.
I feel the same way, like eating for the seasons, like eating what's available there where you're at locally. Totally. Or, storing it, or, how to keep it through the seasons, whether it's fermenting or things like that. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I'm going to ask Chris, what would you say is the biggest obstacle for folks starting a backyard garden, and how do you help them with that?
Sure. I just want to I'll follow up on Mike's with a little bit of personal reflection about what Mike said. I found myself feeling guilty about eating raspberries from the grocery store. I noticed I'll get them for the boys. I'll get them for my kids. I'll get all the berries and they love that. Mm-hmm. But personally, I won't touch them. And I think it's a little like problematic that I have such guilt because I know about the miles, right? And
sure.
I've experienced all these berries right off the bush, and it's just environmental guilt was something that I kind of wanted to talk about on this episode.
Yeah, sure.
Because it comes up with me a lot, and it's got to be there for other people, I have to imagine. So with the food miles thing, there's like, it's not really a caveat. It's just like, if you're feeling that way, I feel you, if that makes sense. But for starting a garden, I think like with composting, my like very early on realization was composting's not easy. And I did a composting workshop with master gardeners, mm-hmm. and I found myself standing up there like, it's not easy. You don't just throw stuff in a corner. That's a recipe for disaster. So, or just a pile of stuff if you have the space. That does work. That works. That's easy. You can throw it into the back 40 and you're good.
It'll break down, but
yeah.
How much time will it take?
To run a hot pile, to run an active composting pile, it's not nothing. And people like to encourage people to jump in with, it's easy, get started. And I think that that's motivating, but just like when you're taking somebody out for their first bike ride and you're like, we're just going to do an easy flat 10 miles. And I've done that, right? I'm like, oh, well, listen to yourself. It's not easy. It's easy to you. And so I think that's a big hurdle. It can become a big hurdle when you start and then find out it's not easy. Right. I just can't grow. And then you just downgrade yourself as a gardener. I can't grow big tomatoes. I can grow cherry tomatoes, a few, but it's just starting off on the wrong foot. So what we like to do is set people up for success. And like I said, developed that process and continue to refine this process. How do we repeat success for everybody, for every garden, for every crop? And so that's what we have set up today. I think often people get frustrated or confused with the information online. Having gone through the Master Gardener program, my advice to everyone is, if you're looking for an answer, go to backyard-eats.com. No, go to Google and write in your question or your whatever you're noticing with your plant or your garden, and write the word extension after it. So this will pull up all the agricultural extension articles rather than pop science articles that really like clickbait that like really don't help you clarify what's going on.
That's
So
great
it's more
advice.
dry.
Great advice. Because I've
Yeah,
been
and it's
down that path, and it's
Yep.
great to have a clear-cut place to look. Can you repeat
Yep.
that again?
If you go to your favorite search engine and you do your query, add the word extension, EXTENSION, because it refers to the agricultural extensions, which are the universities that have agricultural programs and are intended to do an outreach, just like Penn State Philly Master Gardeners does.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, I guess so. So I think conflicting information is a big problem. When I started, I actually started doing companion planting. Now, companion planting is really cool, but there's a version of it that's like a 20 by 20 grid, and you look up if cucumbers can be next to carrots or if they don't prefer or if they don't care. And it's like X's and red and green and
Sounds
I'm
confusing.
mapping this out. I'm like, how do I do this square foot garden with everybody being happy? And I actually, figured it out, of course. And then later on realized it's just a bunch of nonsense. Like all of the like very specific interactions, what I'm saying is nonsense. Like, there are a lot of great interactions with plant height and coverage that make a ton of sense. So
Nice.
Not throwing out companion planting altogether, but this specific version that had me doing this like rigorous analysis, it's just based on nothing. There's no science. So that's one example of how I fell down that rabbit hole, and then sort of had to pull myself out through my background in science and see like what's really important here.
So you bring so much value to your customers by knowing this up front and planting accordingly. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, we've developed that planting plan system as well. We have an online order form that's custom to each customer and their garden. So as they click off plants for spring and summer, it's filling up the graph, the bar chart of how full their garden is for each season. So yeah, we've incorporated those lessons into that. In that, there's interactions, right, Mike? There's plant interactions. Maybe you could speak to it.
Yeah, I was also thinking about like sometimes we'll like just catch people at the bottom of rabbit holes, like go out to a consultation and be like, well, I've been like saving my eggshells and grinding them up into a powder and amending the soil, and it's like, well, let's rewind. Let's start with like some good compost and raised bed and get rid of this grass and like all this stuff. But what Chris is saying is that there's clearly a companion planting is a rabbit hole. It can be a rabbit hole as it relates to getting a successful agricultural garden off the ground. Like if you got carrots next to something they like, but they're being shaded by the tomato, like where's the hierarchy of needs here?
Sure.
Sun.
We should.
It's just sifting through the conflicting. Or it's, some of it's surely misinformation. I think more of it's like just conflicting information.
So that leads me to ask you, I know there's so much to talk about when it comes to this topic. But Mike, how can folks get in touch with you to move forward or find out some more information about how you can help them?
Yeah. So backyard-eats.com is our website. Where you can book a consultation with us, which is ultimately the start of all of our client interactions. But if you follow us on social media, there's a ton of resources we try to provide just for the community in terms of garden know-how, getting off the ground, and maybe addressing some misnomers or hierarchy of needs. So there's a ton of information out there through our website and social media surrounding gardening in general, but to engage with us as like a client or get us out to your property to look and advise on where a garden could go, what you got going on, how to move forward. A consultation is the first step. We typically come out and do a sun analysis, check out where your water source is, how you interact with the space, and ask you what you're trying to get out of the garden, and eventually come up with something very custom to your property and design, followed by
Fantastic.
like a 3D rendering process. So we can show you like exactly what the garden might look like in your space, what
Nice.
the whistles are, and get you exactly, kind of what you want.
Good stuff. Thank you. Well, before we get out of here, I just wanted to do our breakdown. The breakdown. What would you say is the biggest misnomer when it comes to having success?
The biggest misnomer. Oh boy, Mike, jump
I
in.
know. I'm sure there's a lot.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind. Well, the biggest misnomer I think of the backyard garden is that it's gonna look crazy, and that you're not gonna want to see it. That it's gonna be an overgrown mess, and put it behind your shed or something. It can look good. It can be part of the space. I think that most people like your living space, and it's actually ideal. The idea that you could be at your kitchen sink and right outside there's a ripe tomato that you could walk out and harvest in your bare feet.
Nice.
And really that's what it's all about, like interaction with the garden and promoting that. So I think the biggest misnomer is that the garden should be buried away and never looked at.
I think mine
sure.
was that, right, that it's not necessarily easy or fun. And I hate to be the bad guy because you're like, go garden, go plant, go just put seeds in the ground and nature, right? Nature, it's nature. But it's a human technology. It's not nature. It's very close to nature, puts you very in tune with nature. It's not necessarily easy or fun. So if you're not having a good time, you're not a bad person. You're busy. You are not a scientist. You don't have, I don't know, a clear cut path to follow. And that's where we come in. And we offer all those lessons learned. I had to say, I was going to say, we have to flex a little bit. We have taught in AI all of our rules around how to build a garden, how to, plant a garden. So as far as the companion planting conversation and how we do our bespoke planting plans for our customers, spring and summer, we have a certain set of rules based on what we've figured out is important: height, orientation toward the sun, grouping by soil disease.
Fantastic.
There's 10, 12 more that we put in there.
That's great. That's great. You use your years of knowledge and experience
and
to create and
through.
And replicate that for your customers. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I wish we could talk longer, but folks, check out Backyard Eats and follow them on Instagram. Go to the website backyard-eats.com. Thank you so much to Mike and to Chris for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having us. We'll have to save everything for part 2.
Yes. And thank you all for liking.
Thank you for tuning in to another awesome episode of Speaking of Sustainability. Please follow and support our guests as we encourage you to continue doing your part to make a difference in our global community. And don't forget to rate, like, and share. See you next time.